did you see with the current draft that made you go, I mean, we need to change it up? Like, what are some problems you see with the current draft, the way it's set up?
Yeah, so I mean, this has always been true, but the point of the draft is to they take players and they say you go play for the team that drafted you. They can't play other teams' offers off of each other, which is what happens in free agency and why people get big free agent contracts. If somebody drafts you, you got to go play for them. You can tell them beforehand you don't want them to draft you, and maybe they won't draft you. But if they do draft you anyway, you have to play for them, and there's nothing else you can do. And I don't like that. You know, I'm a fan of the NBA players. I root for them in college. I am not a fan of forcing them to go play for these teams. You know, even they are making a lot of money, so you know it's not the end of the world for them. But I still am not completely comfortable with the situation that it is. And Kyrie Irving had made these comments last week, or they were publicized last week. I don't know when he actually made them, but he was saying the draft is unfair for players, and I agree with him.
Definitely. I agree with what you said, and you know that leads to my next question, because you bring up issue with the draft, and you bring up how players need to have empowerment and things of that nature. But at the same time, it's imperative to ensure, as you dive into, that the draft works, that parity still remains, things of that nature. Yeah. So what are the parameters, what are the goals that you have put place, that you came up with, that can help us, you know, keep the parity, but somehow at the same time, which is hard, give players more rights? Like, how do we balance it out? What were your goals that you
Yeah, so I was thinking, right, we have the draft in part due to parity as well. The worst teams get the best picks. It ensures that a team like New Orleans in a small market can have Zion Williamson, even though presumably in free agency he wouldn't sign there. So I want to make sure that the small market teams don't get left behind. Any system that doesn't just hand them the best players is going to be a little bit more unfair to them. But I want to preserve some possibility of small market teams becoming good.
Definitely. And what I found very interesting, and I thought it's a very radical idea, but it's one I like. And you talk about how instead of like a typical draft, you know, you drafted 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. You talked about how all rookies, should enter the league as free agents. You know, they would be able to sign with any team in the league. And you mentioned how they would be given contracts. So dive into that. That's a very radical, and I think, good idea.
So my thought was, I want the players to all be free agents. They have the choice to go to. But I admit that most players would choose the big market teams in that case. So I wanted to give a catch, which is that right now in the draft, when you draft a player, you give them a contract that depends on where they got drafted. So the contract for the first overall pick is worth more than the contract for the second overall pick. You can find this data out there for how much it's worth exactly. But the way it works is you draft a player and then you offer them the contract that matches their pick. And I want it to be, you will just offer them the contract without the draft. So you get assigned the contract that's the same as what your pick would have been. So if you were going to have the fifth pick, you can give the fifth biggest contract. If you were going to have the first pick, you can give the biggest contract. But then it's up to you to convince players to take it. And if they want to take less money to go to another team, they can.
Gotcha. What I love about it is, I remember an article as I read it, you broke down how if a team has a higher seed, like let's say the Lakers, right? They can't offer as much money as, let's say, a team on the bottom, like Golden State may potentially be, depending on, you know, how things go, or maybe more realistically, a team like the Charlotte Hornets, right? Like you mentioned how Charlotte Hornets can offer more money than the Lakers. So I think that's great. And I guess you could like talk about like how is that a positive? Like what does that do to sustain parity?
Yeah, so based on the scale, it's like the first pick would get $50 million over 5 years. And the last pick, the Lakers pick, would get something around $12 million over 5 years. So you're going to get 4 times as much money if you go to the better team, or if you go to the worst team. And my thought is that at the end of the day, money talks. If you're Anthony Edwards, maybe you'd rather play for the Lakers than the Timberwolves. But I don't know if you're that much more willing to play for them, to throw away, it's like $35 million, especially on your first contract when you're not a free agent. My evidence for this is how normal free agents work. We see all the time players turn down less money from good teams to sign for worse teams. I cited Gordon Hayward in the article. Gordon Hayward had $20 million from the Celtics this year if he wanted it. And he turned it down to go play in Charlotte because they were going to pay him more. And they're not a contender, and he was okay with that. So I don't see why rookies wouldn't be.
Exactly. I agree with that. But I do think, and you bring up some of these, there are some potential problems that could arise from this system. One such problem, and I phrased it this way when I was discussing it with Maya earlier, I mean, I would look at it as and I know it's not exactly perfectly synonymous, but the idea is represented here. It's the whole Aaron Rodgers behind Brett Favre thing, right? Like, where maybe a player wants to be a Aaron Rodgers to Brett Favre. Like, so let's say Zion wasn't drafted yet. He's getting drafted, I don't know, let's say next year, right? And he's like, well, I'm strong, I'm powerful, I'm a strong player. I like to finish at the rim well. Maybe I could play behind LeBron James, on the Lakers. Maybe I can go over there. And like you said, that doesn't always happen. But there's always a chance, because like a player might want more money, so they'll go to the worst team. Or I think another instance why they might go to the worst team is they want playing time, right? Go to that top player, go to that top team. But what happens if like a player like a Zion is like, hey, I'm fine with sitting behind a player like LeBron, and he goes to the Lakers, and then they have either another star starting or they have like a star level 6 man of the year, and that team's just crazy. Like, what happens with that?
Yeah, I mean, that's Zion's choice. I want to give him the choice to do that. That's like I'm in favor of player empowerment. If he wants to do that, he can. So yeah, I admit that if everybody did that, the system wouldn't work. Because then the bad teams would never get good players. But I think most people wouldn't do that. I think what would happen more often is that somebody like Zion would say, I can play for New Orleans or I can play for New York. They're also bad, but they're a big market team. So he can go be the guy in New York. I think that would probably happen. But they can only give one rookie the contract because they're only going to have one pick. So maybe somebody else, so then maybe he goes to New York, but the second best guy goes to New Orleans or something like that. I don't think he's going to throw away a lot of money, but yeah, I do think they probably do go to the big market teams in a lot of cases. And
I guess my question for you now is one that you address in the article, but what if you have a cheap owner, like, some of these owners, they just don't want to spend, and they decide, you know what, I'm not going to use my money to sign a rookie. I'm going to save it so I could pay AD more money. Like how would you recommend that, or how that could be addressed?
That was something I thought of because I like follow baseball too, and there have been issues in baseball with people not spending money, like big market teams trading away people on big contracts because they don't want to pay for them. And I wasn't sure what happened, so I would recommend really investigating if it would happen. But if you're afraid of happening, you could just make it so that if you get a contract slot, you have to use it. You can trade it if you want, but if you keep it before the time of the draft, you absolutely have to sign somebody. And I also offered the idea of the league paying for the salaries themselves. Everybody would chip in equally, and then the teams with the higher contracts to offer would obviously be able to spend more of it, but the league as a whole would pay for it.
And what do you think would motivate the league to pay for it? Like, what benefit could they get out of this system you propose?
It would be So I don't think they would actually agree to it, but the selling point is that it promotes parity. And if you actually want to promote parity, you can have the league pay for stuff as opposed to limiting salaries. You can have the league benefit the worst teams too, or the small market teams too.
So do you believe that maybe, because as you point out, I mean, it's tough to get the league to go for it. And you mentioned in your article, you mentioned how drafts, like changes for drafts, have to come through the CBA. And that's a very tough negotiation process. It got all these lawyers, all these people trying to vie for control and stuff. So you think like the change would have to come through someone else, like a different group of people?
The change would have to come through the CBA, which would throw a wrench in it. That's why I was using the original rookie scale offers, because if we use the original rookie scale as the offers that the teams can offer, the owners don't actually have to spend any more money. They would give out the same contracts they gave out before, even though there's free agency. So that's one reason why they might take it. And then the second is that it may still promote parity, or it still promotes parity to a degree. And it disincentivizes tanking to a degree, which they don't want. The owners are on the record as not wanting tanking. Because if you're tanking, nobody's going to want to play for you. So that's why they might go for it. As for the players, I would think they'd want to go for it because it gives them choice. It's player empowerment. But the problem with that is you can't join the Players Association until you enter the league. Mm-hmm. So you've already been drafted at that point.
So I guess you need like the owners and people like that to kind of push it, I guess. It's kind of what you're saying.
You need the owners to want it. If it's something that the players have to like get in exchange for trading something else, the players wouldn't go for it.
Gotcha.
I have a question. I'm sorry to interrupt. I have a question for that I was just wondering. Guys like Zion or just the biggest stars from every year, what happens if they get their own rookie shoe deals? That say if you go to the Lakers, we'll make up the money based off the shoe deals. That was something that I was thinking like the kind of would naturally just start happening.
Yeah, so that is something I thought about. It could have an impact. I'm not sure it would. My first belief is that they're going to get the same shoe deal wherever they go. That the NBA is so national that like LeBron can get huge shoe deals in Cleveland.
That's true.
I don't think it really matters where you go for your shoe deal. But it does mean that if you were definitely going to get a big shoe deal, no matter where you want to go, maybe it doesn't matter what your rookie contract is. I do agree with that. My only point on that is that the regular free agents, that doesn't seem to have an impact on that. Like LeBron has a massive shoe deal. I don't know how much he makes from it, but it's probably more than his NBA contract is worth. But he didn't take a minimum deal in LA in order to facilitate another max star playing with him. And he could have, he would be fine financially if he did that. And nobody does that. So it could impact it. I'm definitely not ruling out that it would impact it. I'm not convinced it would, though.
Cool. That's fair. Mike, back to you.
I was actually going to ask the same question, that Mike asked, but I think that was a great answer. And yeah, that pretty much, I appreciate you being on, Andrew. I appreciate you taking your time to give us all this wisdom and break down this amazing proposal you have. Like, I think it realistically could work. Like you said, the one issue could be NBA players deciding to go to the better teams regardless. But like you said, the goal is to give them player empowerment. And I feel like, that's very, very pivotal for them to have, that kind of empowerment that enables them to do what they want to do, instead of the owners having to, own everything and decide everything. So I think that's amazing. So.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, that's my goal too. That's my goal in
it. Maya, do you have anything else or anything else?
No, you said it, Andrew. I just appreciate you being on. This is such a cool, interesting topic. I love that the NBA, I think out of all the different sports leagues in America, it really pushes innovation. they don't just kind of sit where things have always been this way, so we can't make changes. Things still change slowly. Obviously, we want things to change a little faster than they end up changing. This is definitely a topic I think should be looked at, specifically in regards to if I'm a 19-year-old kid in the real world, I go do whatever I want to do. If I'm a basketball player, I can't even control what city I live in. That doesn't seem sustainable moving forward. I don't see how that's going to continue on in 20 or 30 years. So that's definitely going to need to be looked at. So yeah, I appreciate you writing the article and talking to us about it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I've had a great time.
Cool.
Me too. I learned a whole lot, and I appreciate you being on. It was an honor to have you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks so much.